One thing I forgot to mention in earlier Diotima's speech with Socrates, she says that love, its mother is poverty, and its father is poros, resource, someone with a lot of wealth, a lot of resources. That's important to know, because if one is to be an imitator of God, as Paul says in Ephesians, one has to combine poverty with riches. It says in Proverbs, by humility and fear of the Lord are riches and honor. Okay, but also Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor; yours is the kingdom." Also, Socrates says that love, it's the spirit of love, it's a messenger between the gods and men. That's exactly what a shaman is. In fact, the Hebrew word for oil or fat, it's transliterated as shaman. So the Socrates, for example, and he says it's a prophet, love's a prophet. So look into shamanism. So oil, anointed one, Messiah, means smeared with oil. Okay? And Paul prays that you be filled with all God's fullness. Okay, now onto the ladder of love. In order to see the highest mystery, love, there's certain steps one has to take in order to get there. Diotima says. First, she says, one has to start out with falling in love with one beautiful body. Then one must see that the beauty of one body is just like the beauty of any other body, and fall in love with all the beautiful bodies. Then he says one must see that the beauty of the body is nothing compared to the beauty of the soul, and fall in love with all the beautiful souls in the world, not limiting yourself to one. Then he says she says to see the beauty in pursuits. That Greek word also can mean occupations or activities. She groups that together with the beauty in laws. The beauty in pursuits and laws is connected with the beauty of the soul, because the latter is a reflection of the former. The laws prescribe what a beautiful soul is. Beautiful soul does beautiful activities, right? And then, okay, next, second last step, Diotima says, see the beauty in all studies. And then the last step is seeing the beautiful itself. Notice there's an echo here of Plato's Republic, in which he says in order to see the idea of the good, like the idea of the beautiful, he says in Book 7 of the Republic, one has to study the following. Last, she describes what she calls the highest mystery, the beautiful itself. As I said at the beginning of the Symposium videos, the mystery, word also used in the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita and the Tao Te Ching, to describe God. In the Tao Te Ching also, like in the following description from the Symposium, it says in the first chapter that the Tao cannot be named, cannot be put into words. She says that this beautiful itself, it's the thing which makes all beautiful things beautiful. All things partake of it. Like in the West Side Story, Tony sings about Maria, the most beautiful sound I ever heard. Every sight that I see is Maria. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the person who really sees is the person who sees one Lord permeating in all things. Okay. Now, Diotima says that if the life which above all others is worth living, above all others worth living, is that which is in contemplation, in observance of absolute beauty. Like Aristotle in the Ethics, the highest happiness, he says, consists in contemplation. Research contemplation. It's connected with meditation as well. There's a big history of contemplation in Christianity with mystics like Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, and others. Okay, the last major part of the dialogue is a speech given by Alcibiades in praise of Socrates, which is meant to parallel the earlier speeches given in praise of love. So the implication is that Socrates is that great demon, spirit, love. Now, Alcibiades comes in drunk. That's very significant because the word symposium, it means drinking together. Now, notice earlier in the dialogue, the participants they agreed to get rid of the wine and the flute girls from their symposium. So the dialogue, it's ambivalent about the value of alcohol, wine, just like the Bible is. By Alcibiades giving his speech in praise of Socrates drunk, it's implying that alcohol, wine, is one of the things that fills one with the spirit of love. There's one person I know, I never saw her so loving as when she was drunk. never showed so much love towards me. What was I going to say? In the Bible, Ecclesiastes 9:7, eat thy bread, drink thy wine. The wedding feast, Jesus turns water into wine, John chapter 2. It's implying that wine links one with God, weds one to God, with the all in all. There are mystical qualities to wine. In Genesis 49, verse 11, it says that about the Messiah, Shiloh, his eyes are red with wine. Now, when Paul says, be not deceived, fornicators, drunkards, etc. will not inherit the kingdom, be careful of how you read him, because Paul also says in 2 Corinthians 6, verse 8, that he's a deceiver, yet true. And he says, one having nothing, yet possessing all things. So, in a sense, Paul didn't inherit the kingdom because he's as one having nothing. You can't hold on to the kingdom. The saints will reign for 1,000 years, Revelation says, and the days is 1,000 years, is 1,000 is a day, 2 Peter says. But be careful with the alcohol, because in Proverbs 23, Solomon says, who has woe, who has babbling, who has redness of eyes, he who tarries long with wine. So wine, it's essential, but one has to be very cautious about it. Okay. Also in the Bacchae, the followers of Dionysus, they're drunk on wine, milk, and honey, and that's how they're filled with the spirit of Dionysus, who has a lot in common with Christ. Okay, so Alcibiades' speech, in it, he starts off by comparing Socrates to a satyr called Silenus. That's a great picture with which to represent Socrates, isn't it? Next, Alcibiades talks about how he was trying to seduce Socrates and have sex with him, and Socrates resists him. So notice Alcibiades is associated with wine and sex. Notice in the ladder of love, the love of the bodies is one of the steps on the ladder to seeing the beautiful itself. Love of the bodies, in Pausanias' speech, has to do with sex. Nietzsche says that the degree and kind of a man's sexuality reaches up to the ultimate pinnacle of his spirit. The degree and kind of a man's sexuality up to the ultimate pinnacle of his spirit. Okay? Examine your opinion about sex and its relation to goodness. Also in the first chapter of the Tao, it says that the ever-desiring soul is equivalent with the one that's without desire. In other words, the former leads to the latter. Then Alcibiades concludes by talking about how brave and self-controlled Socrates is. So it's an example of a beautiful soul, as I was talking about earlier. After that, after he concludes, Socrates shows his love for Agathon by saying he desires to praise Agathon, and he's sitting next to him, which makes Alcibiades jealous. The way the dialogue concludes, it talks about the same man can compose tragedy and comedy. Love is both a source of good and bad. In other words, like Shakespeare. Okay, conclusion. All you need is love. Okay? Seek to grow in love for all things, all people. The perfection of love, Aristophanes says, is to be in union with the beloved. So seek union with all things. Do good to all. The way you do that, you have to seek the spirit of love and of wisdom. Bhagavad Gita says, knowledge is the chief purifier. Remember, the last step on the ladder of love is seeing the beauty in all studies. So study. Wisdom is a tree of life. Seek wisdom with all your mind, all your heart. 1 Corinthians 12, Paul says, you can't say of anyone, I have no need of you, because the Christ is the all in all. Everyone contributes to your knowledge and love of God. Okay? So seek to be exhorting, teaching all men. No life is more worth than that in contemplation of absolute beauty.